It was just a simple email at first glance. The subject line was innocuous enough. Family Beach House Reunion, your invitation. Quinn stared at the screen for a few seconds, fingers poised above the keyboard. She almost deleted it without opening, almost pretended it didn't exist. But then her eyes scanned the list of names. Quinn Turner. Yes, that was her. The email wasn't a mistake. She was invited, but the weight of that knowledge sank her stomach like a rock. The Turner family beach house reunion. It had always been a big deal. Every summer, they'd pack into that old, creaky house by the shore, cramming into bedrooms with mismatched bedsheets, arguing over whose turn it was to cook or clean. It was tradition, but it was also the one time of year Quinn could feel like she was part of something until she wasn't. She'd learned long ago that family was a game of favorites, and she, unfortunately, was never it. She clicked open the email. Hi, Quinn, the message began, polite and cool, just like always. Hope all is well. We're hosting the annual beach house reunion this summer. We would love for you to join us again this year, but we understand if your schedule doesn't allow for it. Looking forward to hearing from you. It was a nice, open-ended invitation, a suggestion, not a demand. Just a reminder that Quinn's presence was optional, as if her family were giving her an out without actually saying it, as if they'd already prepared for her not to show up. A wave of old resentment washed over her. Her mom's voice echoed in her head, sharp and biting, always reminding her that she was the one who didn't quite belong, the one who hadn't achieved as much as her siblings, the one who didn't make the right decisions or live the right life. Sure, she was invited, but it didn't matter. Her presence didn't feel necessary, never had. Not the way it did for her brother, her sister, or even her cousins. You know your siblings are doing better, Quinn. The words stung, even now. Her mother's disapproval was like a shadow, lingering behind every interaction, every holiday, every family gathering. Quinn didn't need to be told she wasn't enough. She'd learned that long ago, had spent years adapting to it, swallowing the little insults and critiques that came wrapped in what was supposed to be constructive feedback. She sat back in her chair, arms crossed, unsure of what to do with the invitation. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to pretend it wasn't happening. Another part of her felt like she should go, maybe show them all that she didn't need their approval. But still, she was successful in her own way. That thought stung too. You know what? Screw it, Quinn muttered under her breath, sitting up straight and pushing her chair back. It's not worth it. They don't even care. Not really. Her phone buzzed, and her eyes flicked to the screen. It was Remington, her colleague from work. They'd developed a friendship over the past few months, and she hadn't told him much about her family, but she could sense his curiosity sometimes. He was a sharp one, always noticing when something was off, and right now, she felt everything was off. She tapped the message open. Hey Quinn, just wanted to check in. You good? She rolled her eyes. Remington always seemed to know when she was distracted. She didn't feel like answering, but the truth was, talking to him might be easier than sitting here wallowing in her thoughts. She typed back quickly. Yeah, I'm fine. Just a family thing, nothing major. She almost hit send but paused, thinking of what she'd just read in the email, of the way her family made her feel. She couldn't ignore it, no matter how much she wanted to. Her fingers hovered over the screen for a moment before she typed. I got an invite to the family reunion. Can't say I'm excited about it, though. Seconds later, her phone buzzed again. Remington's reply was instant. Why not? It's family, right? Sounds like you've got some history there. She let out a sigh, leaning back in her chair. History is one way to put it. More like a lifetime of being the black sheep. She didn't want to go into detail. She couldn't, not right now, but she'd said it. There it was. Remington didn't need to know the specifics, but for once, just saying it out loud made the weight feel a little lighter. You know, Remington replied, you can always choose to just show them how far you've come. Maybe that's the real point of going. Quinn smiled bitterly. You make it sound so simple. He didn't reply right away, but she could feel his eyes on her. He didn't say much, but he knew her well enough to know there was more to the story than she was letting on. It wasn't about being successful. It wasn't about winning some kind of contest. It was about being seen, and Quinn had long since learned that no matter what she did, her family wouldn't really see her, not in the way she needed. The memories started flooding back, her younger years, when her siblings were praised for their accomplishments. Trinity had won awards at school. Nelson had his own business by the time he was 25, and there was Quinn, just trying to stay afloat, trying to fit in, trying to matter. Her hand gripped her phone tighter, nails digging into the screen. She quickly pushed the thought aside. She didn't need to be reminded of those days. Not now. "Thanks for the pep talk," she typed quickly. "But I think I'll pass this time. I've got too much going on at work anyway." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Her phone buzzed again. "I get it, but don't let them win. Just remember, you don't need them to validate your success. You've got everything you need right now. Don't forget that." Quinn glanced at the screen and smiled faintly. Maybe Remington had a point. Maybe it didn't matter if they invited her or not. Maybe it never really had. She tossed the phone aside, turning her attention to the stack of work in front of her. There was one thing she could control right now, and it wasn't family. She was doing this for herself. The reunion invite lay forgotten in her inbox, but the sting of her family's dismissal lingered. As much as she hated to admit it, it was never just about a weekend by the beach. It was about a lifetime of feeling invisible, a lifetime of yearning to be seen, and in that moment, Quinn finally realized that her version of success might not ever look like what they expected. And that was okay. The phone rang as Quinn was finishing up a report for work. She glanced at the screen. "Mom." Her stomach clenched. It had only been a day since she received the invitation, but already her mother was circling back like clockwork. There was no question in Quinn's mind about the call's purpose. It wasn't to ask how she was doing or to check in on her life. It was about the reunion, and Quinn already knew the conversation would go exactly as it always did. She let the phone ring 3 times before she picked it up. "Hey, Mom," she said, keeping her tone even. "Hi, Quinn," came her mother's voice, a little too light, as if trying to sound casual. "I saw you got the invitation to the reunion, did you?" "Yeah, I did." Quinn leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of the conversation pressing down on her. "Well, that's great," her mother continued, her voice smooth like butter, but there was something else behind it. A subtle tension, like she was carefully selecting her words. "I was just thinking, with the house being as small as it is, and things being a little tight with the renovations and all, it might be better if you didn't come this time." Quinn's eyebrows shot up. "What do you mean, you want me to skip it?" Her mother hesitated for a moment, then responded with a soft, practiced sigh. "Well, it's just that there's not much room. The others have been planning this for a while, and we don't want it to feel cramped." Quinn's grip tightened on the edge of her desk. Cramped? Her heart pounded. She didn't even have to look at the clock to know that it was approaching the usual pattern. The gentle push toward the exit. "I understand," Quinn said, her voice deceptively calm. "But don't worry, I was already planning on skipping out. No big deal." "Well, that's a relief," her mother replied too quickly. "I knew you'd understand. It's not that we don't want you there. It's just the space." "Yeah, I get it, Mom," Quinn interrupted, her patience wearing thin. "Space, always the space." "Got it." There was a brief, awkward silence on the other end of the line, but Quinn didn't break it. Her mother wasn't sorry. She wasn't even really asking. She was just maintaining the same family script that had been in place for years. Quinn had always been on the outside of this narrative, a mere footnote. Even though she'd contributed more than anyone else, she could feel the familiar bitterness crawling up her throat. It had started again, the rejection, the subtle suggestion that, despite everything she had accomplished, she wasn't quite worthy of inclusion. It wasn't a new feeling, just one that always seemed to have fresh edges whenever it resurfaced. "All right, I'll let you get back to it," her mom said, cutting through Quinn's thoughts. "Love you." Quinn didn't respond at first. She didn't have to. There was nothing more to say. "Yeah, love you too," she muttered before hanging up. The room felt suddenly small. She rubbed her eyes, forcing herself to push the feelings away, but they clung to her like a second skin. A distant memory tugged at her mind, a flash from her childhood, sitting in the corner of the living room at another family event, trying to blend in, watching her siblings receive attention and praise from her mother while she was barely acknowledged. The feeling was hauntingly familiar. An outsider, quietly observing, never truly seen. As the weight of it all settled in, Quinn's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Lance. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. Lance was one of the few people she could talk to about her career without feeling like an imposter. He'd been her mentor since she joined the firm, always offering advice and a listening ear when she needed it most. "How's the day going?" the text read. Quinn stared at the words, the familiar sting of her family's disapproval still fresh in her chest. She let out a breath before typing back. "You wouldn't believe it. Got a call from Mom. Apparently, I'm not fitting the vibe for the family reunion this year." The dots appeared almost immediately. "The vibe? What is that even supposed to mean?" Quinn smirked bitterly at the message. "I don't know. Something about space and not fitting in with the rest of them." Lance didn't respond right away, but when he did, his message was direct. "Don't let them make you feel less than. You've worked harder than anyone else to get where you are. You don't need their approval to prove your worth." Quinn smiled faintly, appreciating his words but unsure how much they would help. She didn't need to hear it from him. She knew it deep down. But the constant reminder from her family made it hard to internalize. The sting of their rejection had been a part of her for so long that sometimes it felt like it was a reflection of who she truly was. Lance's next message was more practical. "How's the big presentation looking? You ready to impress them all?" Quinn took a deep breath and glanced over the report she'd been drafting. The presentation was key. She had a strategy session with the executive board next week, and if all went well, it could solidify her next big move. Maybe it was time to finally take control of her own life, the one where she wasn't defined by her family's opinions or lack of recognition. "Yeah, I'm ready," she typed back. "It's time for me to focus on the things that actually matter, my career." Lance replied with a single word. "Exactly." Quinn set the phone down, looking out the window at the busy city below. Her mind drifted to the strategy session ahead. She had spent years trying to get ahead, proving herself, doing things that made sense on paper but never felt like she had earned their love. Maybe it was time to do something for herself. She could focus on the one thing that would make the family's rejection irrelevant, her success. Maybe, just maybe, that was the best kind of revenge. The next move was hers to make. The next chapter, her career, was the one where Quinn finally decided her worth wasn't measured by a family reunion. It was measured by what she could accomplish on her own, and she was ready. Quinn leaned back in her chair, the glow of her computer screen flickering against the dim office light. Her mind kept racing between the email from her mother, the phone call, and her decision to focus on work instead of the reunion. She felt exhausted but strangely energized at the same time, like something inside her was waking up. "Get over it," she muttered to herself, rubbing her temples. "You don't need them." The words felt hollow as they left her lips, but as she exhaled, something shifted. She had spent enough time agonizing over her family's rejection. Maybe it was time to turn that energy into something useful. Just as she was about to dive back into the project, her phone buzzed again. It was Savannah. "Lunch?" the message read. Savannah had been Quinn's best friend since childhood. They'd both grown up in the same small town, and even though their lives had taken different paths, they always stayed in touch. Savannah was a free spirit, someone who didn't let things like family dynamics or expectations dictate her life. If anyone could help Quinn gain perspective, it was her. Quinn quickly typed back, "Sure, meet at the usual place." A few minutes later, she found herself walking into a cozy cafe down the street, its walls lined with mismatched chairs and vintage art. Savannah was already seated at a corner table, her signature red scarf wrapped loosely around her neck. She waved when she saw Quinn, her smile wide and knowing. "So," Savannah began, taking a sip of her iced tea. "How are you holding up?" Quinn sat down, forcing a smile. "You know, the usual. Family drama. Got invited to the reunion, but I'm kind of over it." Savannah raised an eyebrow. "Kind of over it? Come on, I know you better than that. You're fuming." Quinn sighed, dropping her bag on the floor. I'm just, I don't know. Why can't they just let me be, Savannah? I work my ass off, but I'm still not good enough for them. I don't fit their idea of what's successful, and frankly, I'm tired of pretending that I care." Savannah leaned forward, her expression shifting to something more serious. "You know what? Maybe it's time to stop pretending. Maybe it's time to show them what they've been missing." Quinn narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" Savannah grinned. "I'm talking about a plan, something that proves to them you don't need them. You've already outgrown them, Quinn. It's about time they realize that. Quinn shifted in her seat, her mind already running through the possibilities. Like what exactly? Savannah shrugged. I don't know. Maybe it's time to do something big, something for you. You've been holding back for too long. Let them see what they've been blind to. The words stung, but in a way that felt like a wake-up call. She had spent so much time catering to her family's expectations, living in their shadows, that she hadn't stopped to think about her own aspirations. What if it wasn't about them anymore? What if she could just be? You really think I should just rub it in their faces? Quinn asked, half joking but with a hint of curiosity in her voice. Savannah gave a wry smile. Not rub it in. Just show them that you don't need their approval to be successful. You're doing fine on your own. Hell, you're killing it. Maybe they need a little reminder of what they've overlooked. Quinn's phone buzzed again. It was an email from work. She quickly opened it, reading the subject line. High-profile merger proposal. Next steps. Her heart skipped a beat. This could be big. It was the kind of deal that could elevate her standing in the company and put her on the radar of industry leaders. It was the kind of project that could define her career. She read through the details, her mind racing. This was it. Her chance to prove to herself and to her family that she didn't need them. She didn't need to be at their reunion to show them who she really was. Savannah noticed her distracted expression and smiled knowingly. That merger deal, huh? Quinn looked up, her eyes alight with determination. Yeah, I think this could change everything. Savannah raised her glass in a mock toast. There you go. That's the spirit. You're not the same person you were last year, Quinn. Don't let them keep you in that box. Go out there and crush it. Quinn couldn't help but smile. For the first time in a while, she felt a spark of excitement that had nothing to do with family or expectations. It was about her, about what she was capable of. Maybe this was the turning point she needed. As she left the cafe, Quinn made a mental note to call her boss, Lance. She needed his input on the merger proposal and to discuss a few key strategies. She didn't have time for family drama anymore. There was no more room for that. She was going to take control of her life, one business deal at a time. The reunion? She could skip it. This time, the only thing Quinn was focused on was her own future. The quiet hum of her apartment did little to soothe the tension in Quinn's chest as she sat at her desk, flicking through real estate listings on her laptop. She had always avoided looking at the beach house, a symbol of family and the past she'd long since stopped trying to impress. But today, after her mother's call and the lingering sting of being pushed aside yet again, she found herself drawn to the listings. The family beach house, the one they always claimed was out of reach for her, was now a fading relic of their once gilded life. She scrolled through the pages, her fingers hesitating over each listing, but the one she landed on made her pause. It was the same beach house, now on the market. The price had dropped significantly, and Quinn's heart skipped a beat as she read the details. Fully renovated, historic property on the oceanfront, prime location. For the first time in years, Quinn didn't feel the usual tightness in her chest when thinking of the beach house. She wasn't angry or resentful anymore. She just felt something else, empowered. The house had always been a burden to her parents, an anchor weighing them down with their dreams of grandeur. Yet here it was, sitting on the market like any other piece of property. She clicked the contact link and typed in her details before stopping herself. Was she really about to do this? Was she really going to buy the family beach house? The idea swirled in her mind for a moment, then solidified into something far more deliberate. It wasn't about getting revenge, and it wasn't about showing her family she had more than they thought. It was about reclaiming something that had been denied to her for too long, her connection to a past that had always felt out of reach. This was hers to take, not as an act of defiance, but as a way to finally stand on her own, separate from her family's judgments. She didn't need their approval anymore, not for this, not for anything. Quinn made the call to the real estate agent that afternoon, her voice steady, her decision firm. The agent was quick to confirm the house was still available and offered a competitive price. "You're in luck," she said. "It's been on the market for a while now, but the seller is looking for a quick deal." Quinn set up an appointment to view the property the following day. As the agent confirmed the details and ended the call, Quinn sat back in her chair, breathing in the quiet of her apartment. It felt strange, but good. There was a sense of finality in the air, like a door quietly closing behind her. She would no longer be the outsider in the family's history. Later that evening, Quinn found herself pacing the small living room, waiting for Savannah to arrive. As much as she was determined to make this decision on her own, there was a part of her that needed someone to talk to. Savannah always had a way of grounding her, even when the decisions felt overwhelming. When the doorbell rang, Quinn opened the door to find her childhood friend standing in the doorway, a warm smile on her face. "You look like you've been stewing over something," Savannah said, walking inside without waiting for an invitation. Quinn laughed, half exhausted and half exhilarated. "I think I might have just bought the family beach house." Savannah raised an eyebrow. "What, seriously?" "Yeah." Quinn leaned against the counter, her arms crossed as she explained everything that had been swirling in her mind. "I don't know what's come over me. It just felt right. They've always treated that house like it was their legacy, like it was something they were entitled to. But now, it's different." Savannah nodded thoughtfully. "You're reclaiming something for yourself, huh? Not just the house, but everything it represents." Quinn smiled, feeling the weight of her decision settle in. "Yeah, exactly. I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing it for me. I've spent so long waiting for their approval, hoping for it, but this time it's about taking back control." Savannah walked over, placing a hand on Quinn's shoulder. "And you know what? You deserve it. You've worked harder than any of them ever gave you credit for. This isn't revenge, Quinn. This is growth." For the first time since her mother's phone call, Quinn felt a sense of peace. It wasn't about proving anything to her family. It was about proving to herself that she had the strength to create her own future, to stand apart from their constant expectations. The house wasn't just a piece of property. It was a reflection of everything she had worked for, and everything they had tried to take from her. She didn't know what would come next, but she finally knew this much. She had taken the first step toward a future where her success would be defined by her terms, not by the opinions of a family that had never truly seen her. Tomorrow she would view the house and maybe, just maybe, make an offer. Quinn sat at her desk, the afternoon sunlight casting long shadows across the floor. Her laptop was open in front of her, but her attention drifted as she stared out the window, her mind a swirl of decisions. The past few weeks had been a blur of emails, meetings, and phone calls, all leading to this moment. The merger she had spearheaded was finally nearing completion. Her name had been mentioned in industry newsletters, praised by clients, and even commended by her superiors. For the first time, she was starting to feel like her hard work was paying off. But along with this success came a new kind of pressure, a pressure she hadn't expected. The email from her boss, Lance, was simple enough. "We need to talk about the next steps. Let me know when you have time for a call." But when the call came, the conversation was anything but simple. "Quinn, I hope you're sitting down for this," Lance had said, his voice thick with a kind of excitement. "We've been offered a high-level position for you. We'd like you to take a leadership role in Hong Kong. It's a huge opportunity, and we think you're the right person for it." The words hung in the air for a moment as Quinn processed them. Hong Kong, a leadership role. The offer was tempting, but it also left her feeling conflicted. This was her chance to truly move up, to take her career to a level she had only dreamed about. But there was a cost. She had spent years building her career, and now that she was finally in a position to reap the rewards, she had to decide if it was worth leaving behind everything she had built here, everything she had worked for in this city, in her life. And then there was her family. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, the reunion, the subtle rejection. She had always been the one who stayed behind, who worked, who took care of everything. Her success had never been the kind of success they valued. But this could change everything. She snapped out of her thoughts when Lance spoke again. "Quinn, I know this is a big decision. You'll be working directly with some of the industry's top leaders, and of course, we'll support you every step of the way. But we need a commitment from you soon." Quinn's pulse quickened. She stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the keyboard as she processed everything in front of her. She could feel the pull of her family obligations, the subtle guilt that came with every holiday invitation she had declined, every phone call ignored. Could she really leave all that behind? Could she leave them behind? It wasn't just a job offer. It was a statement, a declaration of independence. "Lance, I need some time to think," she said finally, her voice betraying none of the chaos she was feeling inside. "Of course, take the time you need," Lance replied. "But don't forget, this could be your big break." The call ended, but Quinn was left with more questions than answers. She glanced at the calendar on her desk. The reunion was coming up in just a few weeks. Should I go, she wondered? Is it worth it? She had been invited, but the invitation felt hollow, almost condescending, like an afterthought. She had spent her entire life trying to earn her place in their world, but now she wasn't sure it was even worth it. For the first time in years, she began to realize that what she truly wanted was something else entirely. She wanted success, not just to prove something to her family, but to prove something to herself. She had been working toward this moment, working for this recognition, but maybe it was time to embrace the idea that her value was no longer tied to her family's approval. The offer to move to Hong Kong, to lead the charge on the next phase of the merger, was a test, not just of her skills, but of her ability to finally let go of her past, to step into a future that was hers and hers alone. And so, as the afternoon stretched on, Quinn allowed herself a moment of clarity. Her success wasn't about getting invited to the reunion. It wasn't about receiving validation from people who had never seen her for who she truly was. It was about her career, her independence, and her ability to create the life she wanted on her own terms. She clicked open her calendar and made a note. Confirm Hong Kong offer. She knew it was the right move, she just had to take it. Her family might not understand, but they would have to, because this time, Quinn was no longer asking for their approval. She was going to take it. The morning sun hung lazily in the sky as Quinn stood at the window, staring out at the familiar view. The beach house, her beach house now, sat quietly beneath the soft light, its worn shingles and fading paint somehow more beautiful now that it was hers. The house had been a symbol of everything she had never been allowed to touch, a reminder of the family that had always made her feel like an outsider. But today, it was hers, and that simple truth felt empowering in ways she couldn't fully describe. She'd expected the reunion to be awkward. She'd expected it to sting, to feel like a reminder of everything she wasn't. But she hadn't expected the moment to arrive so quickly. At around noon, she watched as her family arrived at the gates, the familiar cars pulling up one by one. There was her mother's sedan, followed by her brother's pickup truck, Trinity's sleek sports car, and then Nelson's aging minivan. Each vehicle carried a weight of expectation, like her family was arriving for a long-awaited victory. But Quinn knew the truth. They had no idea what was about to happen. She heard the sounds of them approaching the front door, the familiar rhythm of their footsteps, their laughter, their voices carrying across the property. But as they reached the door, she heard the jangle of keys, the old keys they'd used every summer for years. The sound of metal scraping against the lock was almost surreal to Quinn, like a piece of her childhood had come crashing back into the present. She walked toward the front door, knowing what she was about to do. The decision had been made. There would be no more hiding, no more pretending. When she opened the door, their faces froze in surprise. "Quinn," her mother said, her voice faltering. She looked at Quinn, then at the house, then back to Quinn. The confusion in her eyes was palpable. "Hi, Mom," Quinn said evenly, her voice calm and steady. "I'm sorry, but I don't think those keys work anymore." Her family stared at her, stunned. Her mother blinked, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't quite grasp what was happening. Trinity was the first to speak. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice high with disbelief. "This is the beach house, the place we've come to every year." "I know," Quinn replied, her tone firm but not unkind. "It's my beach house now." For a moment there was silence. Nelson shifted awkwardly on the steps, avoiding Quinn's gaze, while Trinity's eyes flickered nervously between her and the others. Her mother's face reddened. What do you mean it's your house?" her mother stammered. "We've always—" "I know," Quinn interrupted, her patience thinning. "But not anymore. I bought it." Her words hung in the air, heavy and final. The silence was thick with shock, each of them trying to process what they were hearing. Trinity's lips parted as if she were about to say something, but no words came. Nelson's face slowly turned pale, and their mother just stood there, her hands clenched at her sides. "You bought it?" her mother repeated, disbelief coloring her voice. "But why?" Quinn stepped aside, gesturing for them to enter. "Because it was time. Time for me to take control of something I've always been a part of, something I've always been excluded from, and now I finally can. There was no anger in her words, just quiet conviction. She didn't need to explain herself to them. They didn't get to control this part of her life anymore. Her mother blinked again, visibly struggling to find a response. But this was always supposed to be ours. Your father and I, we've worked hard for this. Quinn could hear the faint tremor in her mother's voice, the old hurt and pride mixing in ways she'd always known too well. But she stood her ground, feeling her own power settle into her bones. I know, and I've worked hard too, Quinn said, her voice soft but unwavering. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. To show myself that I'm not the person you've always thought I was. I'm not your charity case. Her mother opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, she stepped back, her shoulders sagging with the weight of the realization. The others stood frozen, uncertain of how to proceed. Quinn, you don't have to do this, Nelson said, his voice weak. You could have just told us. We could have. No, Quinn said sharply, her eyes narrowing. You didn't want me in this family until you needed something. You never really saw me, and I'm not going to beg for your approval anymore. Not for anything. There was a long pause. Her mother's gaze flickered toward the others before settling back on Quinn. Then, finally, she spoke, her voice quieter. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Quinn said. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm just telling you that things have changed. I'm no longer the outsider, and I'm not going to keep pretending I am. As Quinn stepped back from the door, her family slowly made their way inside, their heads lowered. The realization was setting in. The house, the history, the years of neglect. None of it mattered anymore. Quinn had taken control, and for the first time in her life, she felt completely free. The days that followed the revelation about the beach house felt surreal. Quinn had stood firm, watching her family process the truth of her decision, their shock and confusion still lingering in the air as they tried to adjust to the new reality. They hadn't expected this kind of independence from her, not after years of treating her as the other, the one who didn't quite fit into their mold. The first morning after the confrontation, Quinn sat at her kitchen table, sipping her coffee, feeling the weight of the decisions settle into her bones. For the first time in years, there was a sense of finality. She wasn't playing by their rules anymore. She wasn't waiting for their approval. A few days later, her family began to reach out. Trinity called first. Hey, Quinn, she said, her voice softer than usual. I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe we've all taken you for granted. I mean, you've done so much for this family, and you've always been there. Maybe it's time we did something for you. Quinn leaned back in her chair, eyebrows raised. What are you getting at, Trinity? Well, look, she continued. I was thinking about the beach house. You're going to need help with it, right? I've got some investment opportunities I could share with you. Maybe we could work together on it. You know, bring it back to its former glory. Make it something we can all enjoy again. Quinn's heart fluttered for a moment, but the thought of putting herself back in their control made her pause. You're just offering this because I'm the one who owns it now, aren't you? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. No, Trinity said finally. I mean, yes, but also no. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm sorry, okay? I never appreciated you for what you did, and I want to change that. I don't want you to feel like the outsider anymore. Quinn wasn't sure if Trinity's words were genuine or just part of the usual pattern, but she heard something in her sister's tone that made her hesitate. I'll think about it, she said, then hung up without giving her an answer. There was no rush. Next came Nelson. The message was shorter, more direct. We should talk about the beach house. I've got some ideas for it, too. Call me when you can. Quinn stared at the text for a while before deciding to call him back. Nelson, she said, when he picked up. I'm listening. Listen, Quinn, he started, his voice careful. I know we've had our differences, but like Trinity, I think it's time to make things right. I'm willing to help. You don't have to do this alone. We're family, after all. Are you offering your help because I'm now the owner? Quinn asked, blunt and direct. There was a brief silence before Nelson responded. Maybe, but it's more than that. I've been thinking about how things went down with you, and I know I've been distant. I haven't been a great brother, but that can change. I don't want you to feel like you have to carry this burden by yourself. Quinn's lips pressed together in a thin line. I've never needed you to help with anything. Not the beach house, not my life. I've done this on my own, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, I get it. I respect that, Quinn, Nelson replied. But I'd like to make amends. I'm here if you need me. The conversation ended on uncertain terms, but Quinn felt something shift in her. Was this real, or just another half-hearted attempt at fixing things? Because they now saw what they had lost. She didn't know. But the fact that they were trying was at least a step in the right direction. A couple of hours later, her mother called. Quinn's stomach twisted at the familiar ring. "Hi, Mom," she said, keeping her tone neutral. Quinn, her mother's voice was soft, tentative. "I've been thinking about everything, and I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. You were always there for us, and I didn't show you that I appreciated it. I just thought you'd always be there, and I was wrong." Quinn was quiet for a moment, processing the words. Her mother was never one to apologize easily. It felt like a shift, a softening, but Quinn was wary. "I don't need an apology, Mom," Quinn said finally. "I just need to know you see me for who I am, not for what you think I should be. I've always been there for you, but now it's time for me to be there for myself." Her mother's voice trembled slightly, and Quinn could almost hear the regret in her words. "I do see you, sweetheart. I've always been so caught up in my own world that I didn't see you for who you really are. You've done so much more than I ever gave you credit for, and I'm proud of you, truly." Quinn was quiet for a long time. "I'm not going to forgive easily, Mom. I've spent my whole life feeling like I didn't matter to you. It's not just about this house or the reunion. It's about everything, but I'll listen to what you have to say. That's the first step." Her mother sighed in relief. "I understand, and I'm willing to take that step, for you." Quinn felt a weight lift off her shoulders, but she didn't feel the need to rush into forgiveness. This was her moment of power, not just because of the beach house, but because she was finally standing on her own. Her family might have been trying to make amends, but Quinn knew that she wouldn't be swayed by empty gestures. She was setting her own terms now. As the days passed, her family made attempts to reach out more. Trinity and Nelson offered their investment ideas. Her mother sent a box of old keepsakes from her childhood, things Quinn had long forgotten about, but had come to symbolize the life they had all lived together. Quinn listened to them all. She heard their words, but she wasn't moved by them the way she used to be. It wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries. She had finally built a life for herself, a life that didn't require anyone's approval. The family's apology, while incomplete, was the first step in their recognition of her independence. She wasn't asking for their forgiveness. She was showing them that she had already forgiven herself. And in that moment, Quinn realized that she didn't need them to move forward. She was already exactly where she needed to be. The restaurant was extravagant, a towering glass structure overlooking the city's glittering skyline. The chandeliers above shimmered like stars, casting soft light across the long banquet table where Quinn's family sat, their faces a mix of anticipation and unease. This dinner, orchestrated by Quinn, was the culmination of everything she had built and every step she had taken to break free from their expectations. It was not a family gathering. No, it was a statement. She watched from a distance as they settled into their seats, their whispers barely audible amidst the background hum of the high-end restaurant, the clinking of glasses, the soft murmur of other patrons. It all felt so far removed from the usual chaos of family holidays. This time, Quinn was in control. The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut through. Her mother, seated at the head of the table, looked around with discomfort. Her father, as always, was quiet, his face unreadable. Trinity and Nelson exchanged nervous glances, and even her cousins, who had never really taken much of an interest in Quinn's life, were fidgeting in their seats. They were all aware of the shift, the unspoken acknowledgement that this dinner was unlike any reunion they had attended before. Quinn, who had entered the room just minutes earlier, stood back, surveying them all. Her heart wasn't racing like it would have a few years ago. Instead, there was only calm. She wasn't waiting for their approval anymore. She didn't need their validation. What she had built was enough. She made her way to the table, her heels clicking with purpose. The eyes of her family followed her as she took her seat at the far end. She had chosen this spot deliberately, at the head of the table, in full view of everyone. "Everyone looks lovely," she said, her voice smooth and controlled. "I'm glad we could finally gather. It's been a while, hasn't it?" The forced pleasantries were met with weak smiles and murmured responses. No one was ready to acknowledge the elephant in the room, the fact that Quinn was no longer the outsider, no longer the family member they could ignore or take advantage of. As the dinner began, the conversation seemed to stutter and stall. Her mother, who had always taken the lead at these gatherings, was visibly uncomfortable. She avoided eye contact with Quinn, her gaze flickering nervously as the waitstaff served delicate courses of lobster bisque and filet mignon. The extravagant meal was only heightened by the grandeur of the restaurant itself, a deliberate choice by Quinn to make sure her family felt the weight of her success, both financially and personally. Her mother finally broke the silence, but her voice was strained, as if trying to find some common ground. It's impressive, Quinn. You've really..." Quinn raised an eyebrow, cutting her off. "Impressive? You mean it's impressive that I finally built something for myself? Something I didn't have to ask for or beg you for approval to do?" Her mother's face tightened, but she said nothing. Trinity and Nelson shifted uncomfortably in their seats, not quite knowing how to handle the sudden shift in power. Quinn's words weren't an accusation. They were a declaration. "I've done well," Quinn continued, her tone casual, almost disinterested. "I don't need any of you to tell me that. I've known it for a while." The room was silent for a long moment, the sound of utensils clinking against plates filling the space where the conversation should have been. Her mother's attempt at small talk fell flat, and Quinn could see the realization settling in on her family's faces. They had underestimated her. They had treated her as the black sheep, the one who never quite measured up. But they had been wrong. It wasn't long before the first signs of their guilt began to surface. Trinity cleared her throat awkwardly. "You've really done something impressive, Quinn. This place is incredible. The success you've built. It's hard to ignore." Quinn glanced at her, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "I'm glad you're noticing now, Trinity. Took you long enough." Trinity flushed, but she forced a smile, her eyes darting toward Nelson. He too was quiet, as if unsure of how to continue. The silence lingered between them like a thick fog. Then, as if they were all waiting for the right moment, Nelson spoke up. "Quinn, look, we've been out of touch for a long time, and I think, well, we owe you an apology for not seeing you the way we should have, for taking you for granted." Quinn leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed. "An apology? That's a nice start. But it's going to take more than that to make things right." Her mother's voice was low, almost pleading now. "We didn't mean to hurt you, sweetheart. I'm proud of what you've done. She paused, biting her lip, trying to find the words. "I'm sorry for everything, for not always being there when you needed me. I didn't realize how much I was pushing you away." Quinn studied her mother for a long time. She wasn't ready to forgive, not yet. "It's not just about being there, Mom. It's about seeing me, seeing what I've achieved. You didn't, and now I'm here, on my own terms." Her mother's face crumpled with something akin to shame, but it was too late. Quinn had already moved beyond the point of seeking their approval. She was done being the one who tried so hard to fit into their mold, only to be rejected when it didn't suit them. "I'm not interested in easy forgiveness," Quinn said firmly, "but I'm listening. I'll hear you out, but don't expect me to forget what's happened." The dinner continued in a tense quiet. No one spoke much after that, and Quinn could feel the weight of her family's guilt pressing down on them, but she wasn't moved by it. She wasn't the same person she used to be. They were forced to face the truth of how they had treated her, and Quinn was finally ready to let them see it. This was no longer about reconciliation. It was about her reclaiming what was hers, her success, her independence, and her future. She had nothing to prove to them anymore. As the meal drew to a close, Quinn stood, her chair scraping against the polished floor. "I'll see you all at the reunion," she said coolly, her eyes sweeping across the room. "But don't expect things to go back to the way they were. This is the new normal." And with that, she walked away, her power solidified in the quiet strength of her silence. The week before Quinn was set to leave for Hong Kong, she found herself standing on the rooftop terrace of the beach house, the waves crashing softly against the shore below. The wind tugged at her hair, and she watched as the city skyline in the distance reflected the fading pink of the evening sky. It was a breathtaking view, a sharp contrast to the mess of emotions swirling inside her. The decision that had been weighing on her for months was finally here, and it wasn't easy. The Hong Kong offer sat on the table, a prestigious position that would propel her career into a new league, but with that opportunity came a distance, both physical and emotional, from her family. After the reunion dinner, Quinn had spent days reflecting on the balance she had built. She had crossed a threshold, leaving behind the patterns of her past, those years spent seeking her family's approval, trying to measure up to their standards, only to be met with indifference. Now, with the offer to work in Hong Kong, the question loomed. Was she ready to leave behind everything she had known, everything that tied her to her past? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking her thoughts. It was a text from Remington, who had been checking in since the dinner. She smiled a little, grateful for his steady support. Still thinking about it? The Hong Kong job, I mean. Quinn typed back quickly. Yeah, still processing. Everything feels huge, you know? I get it, but you've already proven everything. What's left to prove? You've built your career. This is just the next step. You're not leaving anything behind. You're stepping into something that's all yours. Don't let the past tie you down. Her fingers hovered over the screen for a moment. What had always tied her to her family wasn't just obligation. It was the hope that one day they would see her for who she was, not who they wanted her to be. That hope, however, had faded over time. She had spent too many years in their shadow, doing everything in her power to earn their recognition, only to realize she'd never receive it. This is it, she thought. I'm not waiting anymore. She walked back into the house, feeling the weight of her decision settle over her. Her mother had called earlier, asking about her plans, sounding almost desperate for a sign that Quinn might stay close, stay within reach. But Quinn wasn't that person anymore. She wasn't going to put herself on pause just to fit into a family dynamic that never worked for her. The phone buzzed again, and this time it was a call from Lance. His voice crackled through the speaker, full of the same encouragement he always gave her. Quinn, he said, have you made up your mind? I think so, Quinn said, glancing out at the water again. It's just leaving. It feels like I'm walking away from everything, even if I've built my own life. You've built something incredible, Quinn, Lance replied, his tone serious. And no matter what happens, you're not walking away from yourself. You're stepping into something that will change your life for the better. This isn't about your family's approval. This is about your future. What's right for you. You've earned this. His words landed like a stone in her chest, but in the best way. It was a reminder that her path forward didn't need to be weighed down by her family's expectations. She could feel her resolve hardening. She wasn't running away. She was embracing the next chapter, on her own terms. I've been trying to make sense of everything for so long, she said, her voice steady. But I think it's time to stop trying to make sense of them and focus on what I want for myself. Lance chuckled softly. That's the spirit. You've got this, Quinn. After hanging up, Quinn sat in silence, allowing herself the space to fully embrace the truth of the decision she had just made. The family reunion, her mother's disappointed voice, the years of trying to earn their love, they all felt distant now, like ghosts from a life she was no longer living. In the next few hours, Quinn made her decision official. She would accept the Hong Kong offer. It wasn't about leaving her family behind. It was about stepping into her future, creating a life that was all hers. It wasn't about them anymore, and that realization felt liberating. She packed a bag for her flight, not feeling sadness, but a quiet sense of excitement. She wasn't running from anything. She was running toward something, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. The past didn't define her anymore. Her future was wide open. Later that night, Quinn stood by the window, looking out at the skyline one last time before she left. There was no more waiting for them to see her, no more proving her worth. She had done that already. Now, she was moving forward, with or without their approval. She was leaving for Hong Kong, confident in the person she had become, and ready for whatever came next. As she boarded the plane the next morning, Quinn felt a deep, unshakable sense of peace. The decision had been made, and her future was in her hands now, not theirs. The holidays were approaching, and for the first time in years, Quinn was heading home, not to the beach house, but to her childhood town, where her family still resided. She hadn't planned on returning, but something about the season, and the space she'd carved out for herself, made her think that maybe it was time. She'd spent so long building a life that didn't rely on her family's approval, but now, after everything that had happened with the beach house and her move to Hong Kong, a part of her wondered if there was room for reconciliation, or, at the very least, understanding. She arrived a few days before Christmas, the streets familiar yet distant. The town hadn't changed much, and as she passed the old family home, her heart twisted for a moment. It was still there, but it was no longer hers to reclaim. Her phone buzzed in the passenger seat, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text from Remington. "How's the trip going? You holding up?" She smiled softly, typing back. "Going well. Going to visit family. It feels different." Good different? Bad different? We'll see. I'm not exactly sure what to expect. I'm keeping my boundaries in place. That's the key. Don't let them make you feel like you owe them anything. I won't. Promise. Quinn took a deep breath, rolling up the driveway of her parents' house. It felt strange, pulling up here like it was any other visit, as if all the years of resentment hadn't built up into something much larger than what she'd originally expected. But today was different. Today, she was not the girl who had been ignored and dismissed. She was someone entirely different, someone who had learned to build herself up without their approval. She stepped out of the car, her feet hitting the familiar gravel, and made her way to the front door. Her mother opened it before she could even knock, her face a mix of surprise and something softer. "Quinn," her mother said, her voice tentative. "It's good to see you," Quinn nodded, her hand resting on the doorknob. "You too, Mom." The awkwardness in the air hung like an invisible barrier, but neither of them said anything about it. Her mother stepped aside, allowing her into the house. The smell of pine and cinnamon filled the air, the same smell that had always greeted her when she was younger, the scent of Christmas that made her heart both ache and soften. "Dinner will be ready in a bit," her mother said, trying her best to sound normal. "I didn't know if you'd want to stay for it, but—" "I'll stay," Quinn interrupted, her voice steady. "I'm not here to make a scene, just here for the holidays." Her mother nodded, the words she had been meaning to say still unsaid. There was a quiet pause before she asked, "How's Hong Kong?" Quinn had to swallow the brief swell of pride that threatened to rise in her chest. She had worked so hard for this, she had earned it, but this time she wasn't looking for her mother's approval. "It's good. I'll be leaving after the holidays. New year, new start, you know," Quinn said. Her words measured. She didn't want to get caught up in the conversation she knew her mother wanted to have. She was done explaining herself. That's great," her mother replied. Her voice was soft, quieter than usual. She was trying, Quinn could tell, but she didn't know how to bridge the distance between them. Over dinner, the conversation was polite, but Quinn could feel the unease simmering just beneath the surface. Her mother asked questions, but they were surface-level ones. About work, about life in Hong Kong, about anything except what had really changed between them. Her father said little, as usual, only nodding occasionally as Quinn spoke. The evening dragged on, and as the night wound down, her family's attempts to keep up with her felt half-hearted. They didn't know what to do with the new version of Quinn that sat at their dinner table. She wasn't the girl they used to take for granted, the one who would bend to their needs and expectations. She wasn't the one who would silently take the back seat while they took the spotlight. She wasn't their afterthought anymore. As her mother began clearing the table, Quinn stood up, excusing herself. "I'm going for a walk," she said. "I'll be back soon." Her mother didn't protest. There was a kind of resignation in her expression, a silent understanding that Quinn wasn't staying for any more forced conversation. As Quinn stepped outside into the cold winter air, she felt the familiar pull of the past, the weight of her family's expectations that still clung to her like a shadow. But as she walked through the snow-covered streets, she felt lighter with each step. This was her choice now. She didn't have to apologize for her boundaries. She didn't have to beg for approval. She had spent so many years trying to prove herself to a family that never really saw her. But now, she was the one who got to decide who she allowed into her life. And that was something her family would have to accept. Later that evening, as Quinn lay in the guest room, her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Remington. How was it? Quinn smiled, feeling the weight of the day finally lifting. She typed back. It's different, but I'm staying true to myself. That's all you can do. And for the first time in a long time, Quinn believed it. She didn't need to fix her family or seek their approval. She had built something for herself, and that was enough. No more playing by their rules. The reunion between the beach house and Hong Kong had shifted something inside her. Her definition of family, her version of success. Her family might still be struggling to see her for who she had become, but that was no longer her problem. As the holidays drew to a close, Quinn knew she was ready to step into her future, free from the past that had once held her back, and she was finally at peace with that.